we're not allowed to practice our culture in public places. That is a direct, statement from an official telling us that. So it's shocking to know that that's still in existence.
I'm Faiza Amin with another viewer-submitted story. We've been telling you about the silent vigil held for youth suicide victims in Indigenous communities. The first being this one right here in front of the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada building on St. Clair East. They've been here for 56 days, but an eviction notice almost silenced a second vigil campsite not too far from here. The people who are living inside that park are now lending their voice to a policy framework that would help to create more space for Toronto's Indigenous community.
Today is day 31 that we've been here at this location.
The sacred fire steadily burning at all times of the day inside David Balfour Park, part of a vigil and demonstration to raise awareness on the Indigenous youth suicide crisis that Northern Ontario communities are faced with. But on Wednesday, a letter delivered by Toronto Police Services threatened to silence this protest.
And she simply handed it to me and said that this is for you.
The two men say they were shocked to learn it was an eviction notice signed by the police's Aboriginal peacekeeping unit, notifying them the campsite would have to be taken down by Friday or else they risk getting charged. The site is being used temporarily by the two men till the city helps them find another park location.
We just created a sacred place for us to kind of reflect and think about what we can do to help the kids in the north instead of just waiting for the government to act, which is taking a very long time.
Though the notice mentioned City of Toronto bylaw officers and park staff would attend on Friday, a spokesperson from Parks, Forestry and Recreation tells CityNews the city wasn't involved in the drafting of the letter and isn't engaged in any enforcement. The area city councillor Kristen Wong-Tem tells us today police have retracted the eviction notice.
They engaged Indigenous elders. They wanted to understand what was happening. They wanted to work in a collaborative fashion.
Toronto's municipal code does not allow for camping and unpermitted fires in parks, but the city does take Indigenous sacred practices in consideration on a case-by-case basis. Park police staff are now looking to develop a policy framework to speak to these needs. Now the city can better engage with Toronto's Indigenous communities.
We have one of the largest Indigenous communities in Canada living in Toronto, and so we want to make sure that the spaces can actually accommodate all individuals, including respecting First Nations traditions, so that there's a better policy to guide us, number one, because right now it doesn't exist. Number two, it also gives us greater understanding, and it will be a document that we can all point to and rely upon when these conflicts do emerge.
Community members, including the two men at the campsite near St. Clair and Avenue Road, will be consulted in developing this framework, due back in November to be considered by Parks, Forestry and Recreation. A step Jeffrey says is in line with Canada's commitment to truth and reconciliation.
With this government now acknowledging that we do have a right to these ceremonies and to these vigils and these fires, the framework is going to help that two-row wampum process that was always supposed to be in existence.
Now, park staff and Councillor Wong-Tam are now assisting the two men in helping them find a more permanent location to hold this sacred vigil. One of the locations being tossed around is Trillium Park in Ontario Place. It already has the infrastructure in place, including a fire pit and public washrooms, but it is a provincial park, so the city must first consult with Ontario's government.